Welcome. What's up, everybody? Hello, hello. What's up, Mike? How's it going, buddy? All right. So, as you requested, protection magic. So, the questions are what constitutes protection? What types of protections can we talk about? I mean, we could go through the Grimoire and we could go through those protective spells that are in there. So, that actually might be a thing. Why didn't I think of using those too? Because I mean, there's a section of protection magic in it. We'll start with Big Red later. Well, I mean, it's compared to the Liber Novus, it isn't that big, but for the most part, there is quite a fair bit of energy manipulation as far as like technique and things like that. So things on like page 225, or what you could do is on page 217, the methods of awakening. Something simple. So, let's actually start with not that book then. And we'll go to one of the ones that I actually started with way long ago. So, one of the first few books I ever bought was the Crone's Book of Charms and Spells by Valerie Worth. It was only $7.95 back then. And it has simple amulets and talismans in it. Now, the way that she describes an amulet or a talisman is really quite fascinating because it's the only definition that I've seen to test over and over and over again. So the inscription of talismans, as she says, is the words and images that follow may be set upon various objects presenting themselves to the imagination as appropriate for use as talismans, whether smooth and shapely stones or rocks, blocks or chips of fine-grained wood, polished metal discs, leaves of venerable parchment, leather trimmed and burnished, and the like. These objects should be chosen so as to provide two faces. The first, or upper, is to be inscribed primarily with emblems, symbols, or images, and the second, or the reverse, should bear the words themselves as covenants and invocations. Such talismans may be displayed openly, yet they are most often kept in secrecy, according to their purpose and appearance. They are small, and they may be carried upon the person to good effect. Here then follows certain inscriptions for most of their empowering. There is, where is it? For relief from pain, they have one. It's the sun in an eye. So that one there. And so the spell on the back says, the serpent wise, the one for the one on the eye says, who meets my eye, his pain must fly. Right? Simple witchcraft, simple chanting. Against earthquakes. And now what she says about amulets. While any amulet may be worn concealed, the ones recommended in this book are often worn openly in the manner of decorative necklaces. Having their surfaces exposed to view, they require greater obscurity of language. To this end, only the Latin tongue is used for the words of these inscriptions, and thus a double benefit is obtained, both secrecy and the tradition of ancient language in which the words themselves recall elder sources of mystery and power. As in the inscriptions of the talismans, the first, in the outer face, shall bear the symbol of the image, and the reverse, all actual words. Here then follow various inscriptions of power, for such amulets have been described earlier in the book, and many of them are well suited to contain ceremonial occasions, of which more shall be written in the future. So, like, there's the to be safe from all harm. It's an eye inside a star or a starburst that's got a crescent and a star inside it. It says, De omnis me servant. And it says, upon one face, an eye in which, with flames as the sun, containing its iris, a six-pointed star, upon the reverse these words, De omnis me servant. So that's this one here, to give an example of what these look like. Now, those ones are really fun. And then they have a whole bunch of runic ones. And they tell you which color it is for which type of rune. So you can go through and you can look and you can do the research yourself to figure out what is the best method. It's for charm to drive away evil, right? Take an iron nail that's been rusted by time and rain and forged by hand. There's a really great blacksmith that makes iron nails by hand that I can drop the link for. On a dark night, moonless and cloudy, set this nail upon a smallish flat stone, and with an iron hammer, strike it thrice at each stroke, saying, Clavis ferris, malus ferris, ferrum refulium, ferrum nobilis. Score the stone thrice across with the nail's point, and then take the stone away quickly and bury it in the earth far from your house. The nail should afterwards be carried with you, always as a charm against evil influences and emanations. That one's fun. Or like, she gets into some really fun stuff too, like the charm to bind an enemy. If you know the enemy's name specifically and you want to do some really interesting things, you could gather from your house or wherever you live or wherever you work cobwebs and place upon them a tag, all of them, like just gather them all up using a cloth or something, right? And on a black piece of linen or a black cloth, whatever that might be, put all of them in the center with a dead fly on top. I saw parts of the posts for it. I didn't actually see the full video. I'll check that out as soon as I'm done here for you. But you put the cobwebs on top of a black piece of cloth, and then you put a dead fly in the center of it. And these words should be written on a piece of paper that you add to the scraps of what you're doing. North, south, east, west. Spider's web shall bind him best. East, west, north, south. Hold his limbs and stop his mouth. Seal his eyes and choke his breath, and wrap him round with ropes of death. Fold the paper 4 times and wrap it up along with the fly and the webs in the black cloth, forming a small bag. This should then be bound up with the end of a long cord and suspended from a hook in some dark corner of the house. I recommend an attic or a crawl space. Do not disturb it, but let it hang there until it's thickly covered with dust, and then it may be taken down and buried in the earth to continue to work its perpetual secrecy. Right? So that one is a really good one. I've used that one a few times. But be careful on the words on that one, because depending on how intense and how angry it is, if you substitute the fly, you get the fly in there, you get the words in there, but if you add their personal effect in there, it becomes all the more, especially if you use their sigil and all the personal linking items that we've covered in the past, man. Those are the things that you can use to protect yourself against an individual, for the most part. And then if you want to like banish spirits of the dead, you could use mistletoe. Where the mistletoe clings to some living tree, there to feed its many berries, fleshed and pale and waxen as the flesh of corpses, you must go in company, for alone is bad, and wrench from their fastenings a few stems well furnished with white fruit. Carry it home and spread them out at night on a tablecloth covered with table with black cloth. Set at random in their midst 5 candles, black candles burning, and at their center a clear glass vessel. Bring then to the table all of these: a red wine of the Medoc, a strained tincture of red carnation petals infused in alcohol, an oil of red storax, and 5 fragments of bone. Set them down in a row and speak this incantation. Flesh lacking blood, bone lacking flesh, spirit lacking bone, arise and be fed. Arise to bone and flesh and blood, this night renewed my mortal food, never more to thirst for mine, nor on my living limbs to twine. Mix in the central vessel the wine, the tincture, the oil, the bone, and sprinkle this a little on the potion over the sprigs of mistletoe. Then before dawn, bear the vessel and the sprigs wrapped closely in the black tablecloth away to the burial ground, where between 2 gravestones the mistletoe should be laid gently down, unwrapped, and the vessel's contents emptied over it. Pluck 5 of the mistletoe berries and to carry home, but leave everything else amongst the dead to find its to find fit surroundings instead of where you dwell. The 5 berries should be preserved in a small vial of red storax oil and always kept near at hand to calm and turn back any rash spirit who would presume to visit you thereafter. So that is some of like my first beginnings of those protective type things. So the Crone's Book of Charms and Spells, it's got all sorts of shit in there. It's really good. The next book that I went and started with was Treasury of Witchcraft. I borrowed this from a friend of, not this copy, this I bought, but back when I was in high school, after purchasing the Crone's book, a buddy of mine let me borrow his version of the Treasury of Witchcraft, which was the same text, but it was a lot thicker. Like it was an older copy. But in here, they have a bunch of protectorate spells and things like consecrations of the magical circle, something like ban, barrier that none can pass, barrier of the gods that none may break, barrier of heaven and earth that none can change, which no god nor man may annul, which nor god nor man can loose, a snare without evil, without escape set for evil, a net whence none can issue forth spread for evil, whether it be the evil serpent or evil demon or evil ghost or evil devil or evil god or evil fiend or hag demon or ghoul or robber sprite or phantom or night wraith or handmaid of the phantom or evil plague or fever sickness or unclean disease, which hath attacked the shining waters of A, may the snare of A catch it, or that which has assailed the meal of Nisaba, may the net of Nisaba entrap it, or which hath broken the barrier, let not the barrier of the gods, let not the barrier of heaven and earth, let it go free, or which reverence not the great gods, may the great gods entrap it, may the great gods curse it, or which attacketh the house into a closed dwelling, may they cause it to enter, or which circleth round about into a place without escape, may they bring it, or which is shut in by the house door into a house without exit, may they cause it to enter, or which passeth through a lock, the door and bolt, with the door and bolt a bar immovable, may they withhold it, or which bloweth in at the threshold and hinge, or which forceth a way through the bar and latch. Like water may they pour it out, like a goblet may they dash it to pieces, like a tile may they break it, or which passeth over the veil, its wing may they cut off, or that which lieth in a chamber, its throat may they cut, or which looketh in at a side chamber, its face may they smite, or which muttereth in a chamber, its mouth may they shut, or which roameth loose in an upper chamber, with a basin without opening may they cover it, or which at dawn is darkened at a place of sunrise may they take it. Right? And so something like this is an excellent boundary spell. And what's fun is Jason Miller wrote Protection and Reversal Magic, a Witch's Defense Manual. He actually has that spell that I just read off in here. He's got it listed under that, which is for the full moon. He's got several protection blends in here, which are nice. Like the reversing hand, you could use to send back negative energies as eucalyptus leaves, salt, crab shells, carried in a red bag, will reverse spells and harm back upon the sender. And that one's pretty fun. There's the Cross of Hecate in here, which is a really interesting way to go. I don't recommend using sugar in your floor washes because it will draw ants. He has a peace wash in here that's made out of sugar, lavender, and rose water. That'll draw ants. Don't do it. That one's stupid. There's a lot of stuff that's dedicated to Hecate in here, so it's very specific to that one entity. Where did it go? And some other gods. No. See, where was that picture? Upside down candle reversals, mirror cages, spitting back at jinx. So low genre. Yeah, this is actually a good bit of hoodoo right here. You can tune in to the energy that you're trying to send back, and you can chew a piece of the Low John root, minding your allergies, and then you say the thing you need to send back, and you actually spit with the Low John root out the in the direction that your enemy is in, and it's a type of banishing ritual. So easy to do. Just get your hands on some low john root, galangal, or bitter root, as it's commonly known as. So there's graveyard bindings. Unfortunately, he uses the seal of Saturn in here, which I'm not, to stop the gossip about you, and that's not accurate. You wouldn't do that. You'd use the seal of Jupiter if you're going to invoke justice, not Saturn. So on page 163, that's an error that he has. So not really the best on that. Sovereign Jinn of the notice, no. So it also has stuff in here on conjuring of Jinn, but it's done improperly because you're not praying that they would give. It's just, I wouldn't do the ones with the Jinn magic. So that one, it's an interesting bit of stuff for this one. So you could give or take. I mean, it's one of those that nice to read, good ideas, make your own. I mean, ideally you make your own anyway, but you can use different types of things. So there's the protective magic that's just words. There's protective magic that's just images. There's protective magic that's both images and words, and those would be the talismans or amulets, depending on if it's something that's seen, a talisman, right? But ideally, a talisman would have English words on the back of it that would be hidden away. Like you would never, they would only be forever one-sided. Like you could have it tied around your ankle, and it would be a talisman of something carved with the symbols or the stones or the words or what have you. Whereas the amulets could be viewed in broad daylight, but they have it in a barbaric language, such as Latin or in Sumerian or in whatever cuneiform you want to do. We could actually make really crazy protection talismans, carving into doing custom jewelry and stuff. The Crone's book, it takes it a little bit further by using an effigy and creating a spell's totem. The spell totems that you use when you use like spiders, you use flies, you can use cocooning things like moths or what have you to protect a space for transformation purposes if you're using the butterflies and such. But you want to make sure that whatever it is that you use is going to have the effect either on a specific behavior or on a specific individual. Because if you're trying to do general protections, it works best if you're doing it on a space, right? And so that's where I'd say go back to the Grimoire of Arts. To protect a space is on page 115. So these ones are nice and simple. Like these ones, again, this book took the first 10 years of my practice to create. And so one of the things that I like is you could take a quartz crystal, hold it in your hand, and on page 116, say the spell of the crystal barrier, right? Or you could be holding a piece of mirror and keep it in your pocket, and then you could be say the spell of the mirrored aura, and you keep a piece of mirror glass with you, right? Or you keep a handheld pocket mirror on you, or in your purse, or pocket, or jacket, or your man purse, or whatever it is whatever the fuck you want to call it. But that way, you've got opportunity to keep yourself protected. And then, of course, on the next page, there's bringing down those kinds of barriers and dissolving those kinds of shields. So they run their course, especially if you're saying the spells every day, that will create a protective space around you. But too much protective space around you, you don't get the interaction with the energies, so you don't get a chance to grow. So it's very situational that how you adapt with these things, you can do so in a better, more vibrant way, right? Like you could visualize if you do the daily exercise, and you do the daily exercise for about, I don't know, 6 months or so, you'll be able to feel the way that energy can project out of your dominant hand and your passive hand, right? So the hand which you write with and the hand that you don't write with. you put them up and below. And if you can do it right, you can project energy in the same way that you would with inside your body going up and down your arms simultaneously. But in this case, you're directing it to the floor and to the ceiling. And that energy that connects between the space of your hands, you can project upwards and downwards at the same time to make a column of energy, which you then use to overlay your space. You could do things like calling on the world tree. And basically what it does is it creates a little mini universe inside wherever your walls are, especially if you mark the outermost walls with specific symbols. So the more geometry that you have to your space, every wall that goes outside should get a talisman on it. That doesn't, if there's a bathroom that's got an outward facing wall over the shower in there, if you've got over in the bedrooms and stuff like that, up over the windows, wherever there's an outward facing thing, you put a piece of the sigil and then you put a mirror, right? Ideally, you would put the mirror facing outwards. You don't want to keep the energy in your space. You want to keep the energy out of your space. So it's not the prettiest to look at unless you put a picture or painting over the mirror that's on the back side of it. Like you glue a piece of mirror to it that's been blessed or consecrated to be able to create those boundaries. And so by being able to do stuff like that, a trip to your local Michael's and get you some mirror plates and get you some picture frames and stick them on the back of the picture frames and just put them up over, like there's those Catholic houses that have the images of Christ or the saints up over the doors or the windows or whatever. You could put pictures of protective animals like your totem spirits, so like a picture of the wolf over every door. Or what you could do is you could get all of the sacred beasts and you could put a picture of them in their cardinal directions up over your space. So when you invoke those, they're actually coming out of the pictures, but on the back of it is a mirror projecting energy back at the fuckers that are trying to send it at you. So you could do that sort of thing. But by doing that sort of thing, you also have to remember that people that can sense energy can figure out a way around that stuff. There are ways to get through every single method that I mentioned, right? And so you have to be very careful on how you develop it and how you cultivate it for your space to let things in or out, right? There are thresholds, there are doorways, there are pathways of this is going to be something useful that you want to do, but you want to be able to use it in such a way that it's going to benefit you, right? You don't want to give away your techniques. So if you see people that are doing certain things, like having the pictures up over the door, chances are that they have the mirrors on the background. Chances are that they have, the whirligigs out front. Like you could anoint those with some protection oil and you could stick those in the outside by your front door. And when the wind hits it, it spins all the shit, right? So you could do those. You could do, God, what's some other really fun stuff? You could do like the blackthorn cross. So 2 pieces of blackthorn. They're usually about yay big or so. You can get them on Etsy if you don't have any local growing. Most of the people in the US don't. So Etsy is your friend. Stitch them together in a cross using red thread. And there's a spell in the Malleus Maleficarum that you can, which is the witch's hammer, which is the witch hunting handbook. If you haven't read it, it's quite weird. But you can use that as a thing to bounce off curses and hexes and shit. So you can use that to protect yourself. Rowan tree and red thread hold these witches in their stead, right? And that's if you were going to get the rowan tree is a mountain ash. Also, it's the same tree. So that also you can use that. It's one of the sacred woods. So if you could find that from a gardener too, you can get the 2 sticks and you can make a cross out of that and put those over your doors and shit and make, bounce off witchcraft. But again, it just depends. Like the blend I made this morning, you could use to protect yourself, your space or yourself or your doings or your talismans. You could use the blend I made this morning with the Angelica, with the Cassia and the Pennyroyal, right? Put that in the smoking cloche with the talisman of protection in there. And you can smoke that and give it the spell of animation. So that way it becomes a singular entity that can be used for protections. And then if you're really trying to get rid of some shit and you want to use the name of God, you can, like the Exorcist Field Guide, right? An exorcist field guide to blessing consecrations and the eradication of malevolent entities by Pastor Swope. Right? There's a prayer of protection on page 43. It's, Father, we come before you in the name of Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth, only begotten Son of God. And it's like, if you want to go and do that kind of thing too, you could do that. Or you could do less with the specific name of Jesus, and you could use like the Celtic invocations. As I will go in the name of God, in the likeness of a deer, in the likeness of a horse, in the likeness of a serpent, in the likeness of king. Stronger am I than all persons. The hand of God keeping me, the love of Christ in my veins, the strong spirit bathing me, the three shielding and aiding me, the three shielding and aiding me, the hand of the spirit bathing me, the three each step aiding me. Right? And you could do something like that. But again, you have to know what they're talking about when you're talking about the love of Christ in their veins is blood magic, is transmissible apocrypha. It's the lineage, it's apostolic transmission, right? If you don't have the blood of Christ in your veins, if you don't know what that means, you don't got it. You can't use it. It won't work. It's just words. So doing stuff that you can use, like projecting your energy into a crystal that can bounce energy out of it, right? Amplifier crystals, Herkimer quartz crystals. Like, there is some amazing stuff that you can do research on, and you can make the crystal grids and make those protect your space, right? Put one in every corner of your house. Just make sure that if you do that, no direct sunlight will hit it, because that shit will burn your house down, right? I've warned people in the past about like the newer witches and stuff. Like, yeah, they're pretty on your altar, but don't leave it out where the sun can hit it. Her house burned down, right? Like, don't be stupid with this stuff, folks. Be careful. There is safety to be had. So, I mean, it's like what you get up to with your protection magic, it can be really, really rudimentary. A couple of sticks tied in the center with some red ribbon or some red yarn or what have you, right? Wool would be best. Dyed with blood, so that way you could, proxy magic your blood or someone else's to whatever you're protecting in this case. Or you would just dye it red in general, like whatever you use is red. You could hang a crystal from it. Dream catchers are great. Those are relatively easy to make. What knots I bind, what knots I weave, all horrors bind to snare the fears that grip the mind. That's the spell I use when I'm making one. You put the crystals and stuff inside. I put the feathers on the outside of it, so that way the good can drip down and the bad just gets stuck in the crystal in the center. So, that way it's negative attachment, and it stays as a loop of nasty, right? And so every few months and stuff, or years, or on a certain cycle or something, you should cut the thing out, and then you should restring it. You don't have to. I know places that don't. They've kept the same dream catchers up for years, and they use it as a ceremonial rod. They'll put the 4-way dream catcher on a stick, right? Before I made the spirit box, I did a 4-way dream catcher, and I would use that as a snare when I was out and doing jobs and shit. For client work or extractions or what have you. So trap the thing in the center of the dream catching net. But at the time, I had it all soaked in the various herbs and stuff of spirit binding and shit like that. So it really was like a spirit trap. So again, I mean, it just depends. And those are easy methods to pull off. And you can nerd out about all that shit all afternoon. Like, this is the stuff that I used to do way back when, and I've continued to do for years, either for myself or for other people. And then, you could just go full balls sorcerer with it and use a spell of animation on something and bring it back to life, right? So that way it serves as your guardian spirit, right? You stuff it with the protector herbs, like the little wizard up there. I'm going to use the today's spell of the day, animate that sucker, and have some fun with it. But as you go through and you determine what is it that you want to protect, right? Can they wear an amulet? Can it be a talisman? If they wear a talisman that has the English on the background, is anybody going to see it? If so, what is going to be the repercussions of them seeing it? Is it going to cause problems? Is it going to cause a conflict of interest in a school setting, in a church setting, in a work setting, in a, friend setting? You got to be aware of that. If it doesn't, then no big, and then there's also the really crazy shit you could do with just flesh crafting, which is getting a tattoo of protective symbols. So you have to maintain your worthiness of the protection if you're using the holy names of God or something like that. Like, I knew there's one unfortunate bastard. He tried to put the Olympic spirit seals on his body, and he wound up getting a scar across all of them. Like, he got them all on his fingers, right? And then he wound up nearly getting his fingers chopped off because he wasn't worthy of having them. So if you do the flesh crafting thing, be careful. Mind your allergies, mind your sensitivities, mind what you're going to do. You could also use like the Sakyant stuff, which is the tattoo magic of the Thai people, where they go in through with the single point needles and they tap it and they do the sutras and stuff. But that you'd need to go talk to an Ajahn down there in Thailand to get. So not accessible for the US very easily, but it's a method that exists. So it's like protection magic 101. Like, here's a bunch. As far as banishment techniques, if you know what the entity is, you can open up a gateway and send it back through. If you don't know what it is, you can use the protective magic to make it bounce off of it for long enough for you to figure it out. Right? If it can pass through, if it moves through crystals and your crystal boundaries, it's probably the genus Loki. If it moves through dream catchers, it's probably Muerto, spirit of the dead. If it moves through mirrors, it's probably a fae or a jinn or something like that, right? Like that shit doesn't affect them, but it'll bounce off just random energy spells, like goo balls that people like to throw, like just like this really shit gross energy. It's like they literally figured out how to put energy of shit into their hand and then throw it at you. It's really gross. There was one dude who tried to use his ejaculate to make like a lightning that would fuck up people, and that was really gross. So, you just have to figure out ways to negate all the different types of energies. So if you've got a water energy that's coming at you, you can use an earth to absorb it, or you can use a fire to change it and transmute it, and then it becomes an air energy when it passes through, and so then you can redirect it and you could use that in a different way, right? So you could take it and transmute it also. So you could use transmutation spells, you can use energy change stuff. So again, it really does depend on the energy that's being used, what's being thrown at you, what you're going to be having to deal with as a result of that. So I hope that I answered some of your questions on stuff that is really simple. Do you have anything specific, Mike, that you want? Do you like anything specific to cover? Did I miss anything? Let's see if you're still here. I don't know. Okay, cool. Cheers. Well, that'll end the Rite of the Day for today. And if you got any questions, you can hit me up. But anyway, stay safe, y'all. There's a bunch of protection magic for you. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe. And I will see you tomorrow morning for the spell of the day. Bye for now, y'all. Remember, don't be evil.